Matthew over here is the Commissioner of Labor and Industry for Maryland Department of Labor. He works with the program managing, leading the departments that oversee occupational safety, amusement ride, boiler, elevator, railroad safety, as well as other industries. Matthew is actually a son of Baltimore County, actually attended Calvert Hall right down the road, and we welcome him here back to Baltimore County, so give him a round of applause.
Overall, the Department of Labor used to be Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, which kind of explained it a little better because it's got a bunch of little subdivisions, and you got to look at it. Secretary Schultz, who's now running for governor, when she was our secretary, she would joke that the Department of Labor is like the hall closet of state government. It's where you don't know where something goes, just give it to the Department of Labor and they'll deal with it. The Division of Labor and Industry, which is my subunit of the Department of Labor, is like the attic of the Department of Labor. It's all sorts of crazy things that you wouldn't think have anything to do with anything else, but they all kind of have a foundation in safety and workers' rights and making sure that we're kind of the referee between management and labor. So our division is called the Division of Labor and Industry on purpose, because we're supposed to be kind of the people that enforce the rules. So if you think of us as referees, that probably is the best analogy for what we do. So within our unit, Occupational Safety and Health, which is MOSH, so usually doesn't make a lot of news, but has been a topic of conversation in a lot of people's living rooms the last couple months because of COVID. The short version of how MOSH works. OSHA has primary authority over all occupational safety and health in the country. As part of the 1971 OSHA law, it allows some states, if you want to, the states can say, we can do as good as you can or better, so we're going to make our own state plan. The state applies to the federal government and says, this is what we can do. We think we can do it better than you can. And if the federal government agrees, then you get a state plan. Maryland's MOSH is Maryland's OSHA. Basically, we are a mirror of federal OSHA regulations. We can be more stringent, but we just can't be less stringent. We have to be at least as effective as anything the feds do. So during COVID time, so in order to issue a regulation, it takes a lot of time, and that's a good thing. You don't want government to be able to easily change the rules. The slower, the better, because it takes a while to understand what the rules do, and the more deliberative that is and the longer it takes, the better it is for everybody. So an OSHA regulation, on average, 6 to 10 years it takes to put an OSHA regulation in. If there's an emergency, they have an emergency temporary standard process that lets you shortcut the thing, and if there's a grave danger, you can do it by just putting out the rule, and if it's published in the Federal Register, it becomes a regulation as soon as it's published, but you only get 6 months. And during that 6 months, if it's still an emergency or it's still a real thing, then you got to go through the regular rulemaking process. If you want to shortcut the process, you get it only temporary authority. So the emergency temporary standard, back during the summertime, they put one in place for healthcare. So that's where you would reasonably come to expect to be in contact with somebody that's COVID positive. That one went into effect mid-August. We adopted it. So our rule is we've got 30 days from when the federal government adopts something to do it at the state level. We adopted it. That was in effect until December and expired in December. The second emergency temporary standard was the one that made all the news. That was the one that would have required any employer with 100 or more employees to have a vaccination mandate on their employees, or a horribly inconvenient weekly testing rule, which was designed to make it as inconvenient as possible for your employees, because the goal was to get everybody vaccinated, not get everybody tested every week. That was in process and then made it to the Supreme Court and was struck down, so it's gone. So as of now, there are no emergency temporary standards in effect at all regarding COVID. Maryland had its own set of COVID rules because of the state of emergency that the governor declared. That's, for all intents and purposes, over. Hopefully, the COVID time is behind us and MOSH gets back to doing the things we usually do, which is investigating accidents, inspecting job sites, general safety requirements. Building codes, we adopt the building codes at the statewide level. So the residential building code, there's the commercial building code, the plumbing code, all those codes get adopted at the state level. We adopt them at the state level, and the counties actually adopt it and enforce it. So we don't come and inspect your house under construction. That's a county inspector. But the code that they're following is a statewide code that's uniform across the state. So that's one of ours. Safety inspections, it was originally, so take a step back. In my office, our department goes back to 1884. So the original labor department or division of labor starts in the mid 1800s, and I've got an annual report from every year from 1884 to now on a set of shelves in my office. And you can kind of see how our department has evolved from the little kernel that it was in the 1800s. And originally there was like a scaffolding law in Baltimore City, and the police enforced it because you didn't want scaffolds falling on people. And then that grows and grows and grows, and now we've got books inches thick. But it originally started with the scaffolding law in Baltimore City. Now we've got boiler safety, so all the boilers in the state of Maryland that are registered, we inspect those. All your elevators, so if you're in an elevator and you see that certificate that's in the elevator, that's one of my guys that signs every one of those. It used to be the Commissioner of Labor's signature, and that was when, before coming to the Department of Labor, I ran an installation company, so small to mid-sized business. And one of the things they said, oh, if you become Commissioner of Labor, your name will be on all the elevators, which sounds awesome. But two reasons it's not awesome. One is my signature is a hot mess, so people look at it and make fun of it. And then the other thing is when people get on the elevator and they see the certificate, the first thing you do is look for the expiration date, and then if it's expired, you call me, and that gets old really fast. So we would, sorry, we have the chief elevator inspector's name on there now. I got my name off that within like the first 2 weeks. So if you do see my name on an elevator or an escalator, that's bad, because that means that certificate's at least 5 years old. So if you do still see my name, then give me a call, and then we'll do something. But hopefully it's not there anymore. So elevators, boilers, amusement rides. So your local carnival, Six Flags, any of the rides, even like the little bounce house at your kid's party, that falls under us. Hopefully we don't inspect every bounce house every time, but with the carnivals and stuff, when you go to the county fair or the fire carnival in your town, every time that ride is set up, a state inspector has to inspect it and say it's safe. So of all the things that I've kind of seen at the Department of Labor, that's the one thing I would say is more safe than I expected it to be. Some stuff is kind of scary, but amusement rides are supposed to give you the sensation of danger, not actual danger. So the amusement rides, those things get looked at every week. They're safe to ride. That's a good thing. And then railroads, we inspect railroads in the state of Maryland. Employment standards, which is all of the wage and hour law, the wage payment and collection, sick and safe leave, minimum wage, all that stuff is ours. And then prevailing and living wage, which is state-funded construction projects. If you are, let's say, foolish enough to want to work on one of those, there's a set of rates that you have to pay all the tradespeople. And then those are usually a lot higher than what you would pay normally. And there's a lot of compliance and regulatory responsibilities that go with that. When you send in your weekly payrolls, that's our guys that review those and make sure you're paying people correctly. But anyway, so went over the state plan. Moshe, one of the things we have to do, speaking of new regulations, we are on the hook for crafting a heat stress regulation for Maryland. There's a handful of states that have them. California has one, Washington, and Nevada's working on one now. We're working on one. We've got until October 1st to finish it. It's not going to apply to offices. It'll be construction industries where you're reasonably going to be working in somewhere hot. It's not supposed to be if your desk is too warm, give me a call. It's supposed to be only for real safety. So we do get calls from people that are complaining that their office is hot. Ironically, sometimes from our own office. We will get complaints from our own staff calling to tell us that their office is where they are is too hot or too cold. Maryland Occupational Safety and Health, the S is for safety, not comfort. So the law does not require you to be comfortable at your desk, just safe. So nothing protects you from being 81 degrees. If it's too warm where you are, you don't need to call us. And then February 1st, 2 days ago, the OSHA 300 logs. So some of the things that we enforce are those labor law posters, which hopefully the Chamber of Commerce doesn't have a side hustle selling those posters. But when you get that scary letter that talks about, oh, you got to have that poster, here's the $500 poster that we'll sell you to prevent you from getting a fine. That's not sort of true, but those companies are there to sell you an all-in-one poster. Everything that's on that poster is available for free. You can just go on our website and download it and print it out and then post them. You don't need to buy the all-in-one poster. We actually have an all-in-one poster at our office because it's easier, but if you want to, you can just download it for free. The OSHA 300 logs, though, that you do have to post. So that's your record of your occupational illnesses and injuries for the last year. They go up February 1st. If you haven't posted it, and this is your reminder, we do actually issue citations for not posting those. If we go, I joke, we're kind of like vampire at Mosh. You have to invite us into your house. We don't just show up and go to your office and look for posters. If there's an accident, if you're in a particular industry that's got a high rate of injuries or illnesses, we'll do some random inspections, but for the most part, there's got to be a reason we show up at your door. So if we do show up, we are going to check for your posters, though. Any workplace safety questions, COVID questions, or anything before I move on? Hopefully, COVID seems like it's been the challenge with COVID is it warps the sense of time and space. So in my head, I can't tell you if this has been going on for 6 months or for 7 years. It kind of all has warped together. So hopefully we're near the end of it and we can all get back to normal. Yes, ma'am. Maybe. So only if it was as a result of what they were doing. So if you just happen to have somebody that caught COVID at the office and you're a regular office, it's not likely something that you have to report. But if you were a healthcare company, for example, and you had somebody that caught COVID, that would likely be something you'd have to report. So that would just get logged. That doesn't impact anything. So those, when you write the stuff on there, that doesn't then feed into some horrible database that we then come to your door and target. That's just meant for you to tell your employees what the results were for the previous year. It does get reported to the federal government. You have to report a summary to the feds in certain cases. Not every company has to do it, but most big ones do. But yeah, you would have to report if it was a work-related. Yes, sir.
So all these local regulations and the posters and things like that, are they required on home-based businesses too? How are those checked or are they?
So your duty is to your employees. So Mosh only covers employer-employee relationship. So we don't have anything to do with sole proprietors. If you're a sole proprietor, you can't cause danger for yourself. So God forbid something happens to you, we don't cover you. We don't inspect your own death. That happens, but we get the calls, but you can't, who would we issue a citation to for you not being safe? You're dead. So with the posters, you don't have to post a poster to tell yourself what the rules are. But if you work for a company remotely, and this is the challenge, there's a lot of weird wrinkles that COVID has caused with the remote work world. Our laws cover you where you perform your work. So if you're a California company and you've got one employee that's working remotely in Maryland, they're a Maryland employee, so our laws cover you. You have to inform them of their rights under Maryland law. That doesn't mean you have to post a poster in their kitchen or in their break room, but you have to make them aware of the laws. So if you have a website, a company website that you posted on and let them know where it is, that should work. But it does become kind of challenging because a lot of these companies honestly have no idea what all these state laws are. And our laws, a lot of them are weird. And we have some, like our Healthy Working Families Act, that is really complicated. And it's 20 couple pages long, and depending on where the comma is, it could mean different things. Washington, D.C. has one. Montgomery County has one. New York has one. New Jersey has one. you're a national company trying to comply with all these different state laws. It's challenging. So not that I recommend not to hire remote employees. My wife works for a affirmative action consulting firm, and they were trying to find out what is the best state they could hire remote workers from that has the least number of tricks and things that they have to comply with. And they're thinking it's either Iowa or Kansas or Nebraska, but it ain't Maryland, because we've got plenty of Maryland rules that would apply to you. But you have to inform people of the rights, but you don't have to post a poster at their house. Legislative session, for political junkies, this is the best or worst time of your life, this 90 days. The way it works, and I'm not a lawyer and don't plan on ever being one, but the way laws get made, it's there should be circus music playing in the background when you watch it, because it is crazy. It is stuff flying back and forth. They got 90 days, start to finish, and at the end of 90 days, clock stops and it's done. So whatever they can get done in 90 days is all that's going to happen. So it's stuff flying back and forth. So right now is the writing and releasing bills phase. So the first month or so is every day another 100 or 200 laws or proposals of bills get put out on the website. And then as a department, we have to go through and figure out which ones apply to us. What would it do? We have to write a letter of information and explain it to the committee and tell them what the bill would do and how much it would cost to enforce. And so as of Tuesday, 11 in the morning, this is the bills that we're watching so far. We're not even halfway through the bill releasing, and we're already up to about 1,500 bills total. It'll probably break 3,000 like it normally does. Thankfully, most of those never see the light of day, because some of them are duplicative. It's a couple different ways to skin the same cat. Ironically, there is a bill about that. Delegate Charkoudian has one that would outlaw cat declawing. So not skinning the cats, but at least declawing the cats. There's a lot of bills. These are some of the ones that would affect us, that we would end up having to enforce some part of. SB 1 is a prevailing wage stop work order thing. So under normal circumstances, if you work in a prevailing wage job and don't pay your employees right, we can go to the company that pays the company that hired you and stop your money flow. Pretty powerful weapon. We can stop you from getting paid. So our compliance rate is about 100%. This would be another layer of authority that would enable us not just to stop you from getting paid, but shut the entire job site down until you pay your people right. SB 34 is a residential elevator bill. We inspect elevators in public buildings and commercial buildings. Some people have elevators at their house. If you do, this bill would apply to you. Sometimes there's a little gap in between the elevator door and the door that swings into your house, and that little space, kids like to play hide and seek, and it's a great space to play hide and seek. It's also really dangerous, because if the elevator moves when you're in that little spot, you get killed. So this would require homeowners to fill that gap with something. SB 66, which is, they call it the Give Me a Chance Act. This one actually, probably if you have a business, you're in violation of this law. It would say that no job posting could contain a requirement to have any educational level of attainment, unless it's contractually required for like license or occupational professional license. So if you got a college minimum, you have to have a 4-year degree to apply, you would be in violation of this bill. This would say you couldn't have anything GED or higher as a job requirement. At this point, in the posting, in the requirement, even for an internal promotion, you couldn't use somebody's education level as an evaluation thing. It's, as we evolve, we're all competing for labor. So in a way, you don't want to have requirements that are unnecessary. You only want to have the things that are actually necessary to perform the job. A lot of times people will use educational attainment as a proxy for something else. So y'all say, I want somebody that has a college degree, because that will mean that they can stick through something. They can dedicate themselves to something, put in 4 years, stick it through and finish it. So somebody that can do something and finish it, that's the kind of qualities I want. So I'm going to say you need to have a 4-year degree for my job. This bill would say that's not the way you want to do it. If you want to have something like a stick-to-itiveness, figure out a way to measure stick-to-itiveness that isn't a college degree or even a GED. 73% of all job postings currently would violate that law. So this would have a lot of companies have to change their way of doing it. Yeah.
I enjoy that
Mhm.
because there have been so many people I know that lost their jobs, high-level jobs with COVID. Obviously, there's games at this time. We came into the workforce, I didn't go to college, but I've had CEO, CMO, multi-million-dollar businesses. They're now putting more restrictions. So even if you wanted to be an administrative assistant, you do not need a four-year college degree for that. So it has really created a lot of issues. And, the state should know this because your department, Tiffany Robinson, because it was preventing people from getting jobs.
And it's not smart either, because if you're denying as an employer a whole bunch of people that are good candidates, then you just accidentally or unintentionally excluded a large percentage of qualified people that you are going to overlook.
When you're talking medical aid,
That's different. Yeah. If I'm a lawyer, I should have a law degree. But if I'm the cashier at Walmart, I shouldn't have a 4-year degree requirement. Yes, ma'am.
As a higher education professional and working K-12, and let's just get and the reason being is that if there is no parameter to set a bar, then the workforce, the return on investment for business owners goes to a decline instead of and the reason why businesses are in business is to be assets to the community. But if there isn't a bar or parameter from which we're bringing people in, then instead of being able to service the community, they're doing online training that is now no longer a workaround. It becomes an educational institution inside of business. So at an impact with this, because if we went by the basic rules with no parameter, businesses right now are already suffering because people aren't coming to the door with the proper basic training to operate a position. And when that takes place, business owners must take time in order to provide that training, and businesses aren't coming in with a grant of $100,000 for professional development, personal development, or business training as it is,
Right.
especially modern pop.
I think
how does this act?
you guys and the guys from the career and technical people need to get together, because that's their whole mission. Same thing.
You're saying this could possibly be a violation with a job description having a parameter. Well, where is the protection for the business?
Right. And that's part of the problem. And it's also discouraging people from finishing their high school degree. So my guess is this bill doesn't pass this year, because there's a lot of wrinkles to it. And it would cost us, we would triple the size of our department. We'd need a ton of people to enforce it, because how does Google know if you post a job posting on the internet that you're violating Maryland law by having a high school degree? There's a lot of things that are difficult. Hopefully it's a good prompt to remind people to, let's figure out how to make a job description that really does accurately fit the job that we're trying to hire for, and only put that in the description. If we can get to that, then that's probably the, yes, sir.
I'll be quick. I agree with you. I don't have a college degree, but I'm certainly from my production skills. I was told that I couldn't do a class on the college level because I didn't have a college degree. And at the same time, I'm more qualified than most of the professors. So I agree with you. I see your point with, qualifications for business. But it goes back to what you were saying. It has to be worded differently. Because college is overrated. And those who are educated, it's a business. I'm not saying, not just saying people who have to do going well, but a lot of research that says that people who have, that there are other ways to become successful in life besides a college degree. College is a business. And I totally understand it. As a business owner, I say, yeah, start a business, run a college, and get $1 billion. But at the same time, it helps you. You have to be certified in something. And again, no offense to those who have college degrees. I agree with what you were saying. I forgot your name, but yeah, and people like people coming to the job field now that can't go back and get a 4-year degree, and they can't get a job because ABC company says you gotta have this experience. But you run companies bigger than the ABC company, and they're trying to tell you you can't work there. I think it has to be worded correctly. It has to be maybe on a situational basis. But I think they should.
Look at your job descriptions and try to tighten them up is probably the best. Yes, ma'am.
Just related to educational experience, or, I mean, where does it end?
This one, education. This is just education.
Like,
High school or higher.
Is it just the posting? Because otherwise you're basically expanding Title VII discrimination to include education.
Yes,
You cannot even consider that.
correct.
So if you choose somebody who has a degree over someone who doesn't have a degree, you're in violation of disability.
Potentially. Yeah.
No, he's saying it's not about the posting.
Right. It's even internal promotion. But yes, what were you going to say? Well, in this, we could go weeks on this conversation, but I'm also the chair, we chair the Maryland Equal Pay Commission. So we've been talking about this for years of like the racial or gender wage gap, wage differential. It's been closing and narrowing as time has gone by. The pandemic screwed it up pretty bad. But things were getting close, and we would have meetings, and I would ask the Milena Cromer and professor from Hood were on the board for a couple years, and I'd ask, like, right now, more women are in college than men. More women are getting college degrees at every level, undergraduate, masters. Women have higher educational attainment levels than men now. And starting salaries for people in their 20s, women are out earning men pretty much across the board. So at what point do those lines cross and women make more than men throughout the wage spectrum? And Dr. Aaron George said 2048. So that is happening, and at some point equal pay will be a discussion of how do we help the men keep up with the women. We've got a little bit of ground to go, but it is going to flip at some point because women are out educating and out earning men at this point within the 20 to 30 cohort, and it's that carries through as it washes through the rest of the history, it'll flip.
So we have the women in agreement with that.
Yes. One of my favorite bills, HB 258, is the Right to Sit Act. Thankfully, it's been pulled, so it might not go see the light of day. But it was a bill that would require the Commissioner of Labor to evaluate all workplaces and figure out what jobs would or would not allow an employee to have a chair, and if so, the employer would have to provide a chair for those jobs. Which sounds like a crazy idea, not a new idea. Ironically, doing the research on this bill, Maryland had a right to sit law in 1896, but it was only for females. So our original labor laws protected children and females. So we actually had a hours of work for females law that it made it, I think, until the 60s, where females couldn't work more than 10 hours in a day. And you also had to provide a chair for females because the workplace in the late 1800s and early 1900s was a horrible place across the board. And so there was a lot of early labor law work to try to make work safer, and the people that they were trying to protect at first were children and women. The right to sit from 1896, that ended up being unenforceable. This one would be difficult or impossible to enforce too. So as of now, it's off the table. But it is kind of funny when you see there are new ideas, and some ideas there aren't. Some ideas are actually 135 years old. Yes, sir.
I think, a lot of this, unfortunately, I think kind of reflects on, it'd be a good idea if you were smart enough as an employer to allow your employees to fill in the blank. And I'm not a huge proponent of lots and lots of laws, only part tongue in cheek. Your time might be better spent going out and talking to business owners saying, here's a plethora of ideas that, you know, your representatives are coming up with. Just to let you know, it might be a good idea if you were ahead of the ball on this. And you may get, hey, you want a chair?
And
Have you sit down.
when you watch it happening and you try to like listen to the people that proposed the bill and figure out where's this coming from, why are you proposing this? The guy that proposed the right to sit law, he worked at a grocery store when he was a teenager and thought that the cashiers should be able to have chairs, and the cashiers said, all you have chairs, so why shouldn't everybody? And that somehow makes it into a we should have chairs possibly for everybody bill. So sometimes it's some little constituent issue somebody's got that is a little tiny problem, and the next thing you know, there's a bill that would cover a lot of other stuff. Joint employer definition, that one fixes a quirk in subtitle 5 of the wage and hour law to extend it to joint employers. It was already there, but it wasn't printed. It was in a footnote, and this puts it in the bill itself, or in the law itself. Prevailing wage for service contracts. I don't think we have anybody that handles service contracts for public buildings, so I'm not even going to go down that road. SB 420 is kind of similar to some stuff we were already talking about. That's work permit information sharing. So we control the minor work permits. So if you have a teenager that goes and pulls a work permit, my signature is the one on that too. What this bill would do is say that apprenticeships and certain employers would be able to get that information and be able to solicit apprenticeships and things to high school kids that have work permits. The thought being, colleges send your kids mail all the time. Why shouldn't apprenticeships have the same right to the information that the colleges have? Interesting bill. Don't know if it's going to go through, but that's fair scheduling. And 698 is a minimum wage increase. As of now, our minimum wage is on a yearly increase until it hits 15. This would cut off all of that ladder and just make it 15 starting this July. And I think, and there's a bunch of climate bills. It's every day there's 3 new ones. If you're a green building junkie, let me know and we can have a long conversation. So minimum wage, there is no such thing as a Maryland minimum wage anymore. We've got like 13 of them, depending on where you're located and how big your company is. So as of now, for the state overall, if you got 15 or more employees, $12.50, less than 15, $12.20 first. And if you're under 18, you get your minimum wage is 85% of the adult minimum wage. So minors don't have to be paid the adult rate. Montgomery County has 3 minimum wages based on the size of the company. And it's not the size your company is today, it's the size your company was when you became subject to the law. So that one's a really difficult one to enforce, because when you talk to the company, you got to ask not how many people work there, but how many people worked there the day that you became subject to the law. I hate that law. And Howard County, as of April 1st, is going to have their own minimum wage. 15 or more employees, 14, less than 15, $12.50, and it will also ladder up to $16. So Howard County couldn't let well enough alone. They've got a $16 an hour minimum wage eventually instead of $15 an hour minimum wage. It's fun. That's our page with the posters. If you ever want to download the posters, that's where they all are. And then I got a lot of stuff on the Maryland Healthy Working Families Act. Basically, if anybody really wants to have any questions about sick leave, the basics are 1 hour for every 30 hours that you work. If you have 15 or more employees, it's paid leave. Less than 15 employees, it's unpaid leave. You don't have to modify your existing PTO or vacation policy and add more time. This is a minimum, not a addition to. So if you've already got a PTO policy and you just say your PTO, you can also use it for sick leave, the stuff in the bill, you're covered. You just have to be the minimum, not adding to it. This has been in effect since February of 2018. I still get between 2 and 5 emails a day with questions about the law, because it is a long and complicated law. I used to carry around a pocket-sized version of, some people carry around a pocket-sized Constitution. I used to carry around a pocket-sized Maryland Healthy Working Families Act, because I would get questions and it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. And you have to pull it out and look through the size. And for example, all the things it can be used for, that's tricky. Who isn't covered? It's easier. Yeah. What's a family member? So pretty much everybody is part of your family if you feel like they're part of your family, except for aunts, uncles, nieces, and nephews and pets. Everybody else basically is family member and is covered under the law. Pets are not family, even though you think they are. They're not part of your family for sick leave. So you can't say, I'm going to take sick leave to take my dog to the vet. If you, as an employer, feel like letting your employees do that, you can. It's not required. Yes, ma'am. Nothing had to change. It's totally gender neutral, and we don't care. So it's already baked into it. If it covers family members, no matter what their gender identity is. Doesn't matter. So it's not husband or wife, husband and wife. All of the gender language is out of the bill or out of the law, so it doesn't matter to us. We couldn't care less. The interesting thing with the pet debate, we do get that question a lot of, can somebody use sick leave to take their dog to the vet? There was a bill introduced a couple years ago that would have provided bereavement leave if God forbid, your pet passes away. That would have been one we would have had to enforce. The trouble with that is there is no definition of pet. There wasn't a definition in the bill, and there's no state definition of pet. So the Commissioner of Labor and lucky staff of the Commissioner of Labor would have to come up with a definition for pet. And that is a minefield we did not want to have to step into. Because if we say just dogs and cats, then somebody's going to come and say, well, I got a horse, and this horse is part of my family. And then you have to make it a horse. And then somebody will say, well, I got snakes. I love snakes. And then it's snakes. And the next thing you know, there's a guy that's a beekeeper with 50,000 bees in his backyard, and one of his bees dies, and he wants to take off work because he's sad. And that would be challenging to enforce. Thankfully, that did not pass. But when they put that bill in, they realized there is no bereavement leave for people. So there is no state law that requires an employer to allow an employee to take their leave if somebody died in their family. So as a result of the pet bereavement bill, they did put in a people bereavement bill last year, and that did pass. So if you've got leave that you can use for other purposes, if a family member passes away, then you can take leave for people. So the pets and people thing is, that makes for fun arguments at the legislature. But thankfully there is no pet bereavement leave that we would have had to try to enforce. Because my instinct would have been dogs and cats, and I have a cat, and when my cat died, I went to work the next day because I was sad, but that didn't keep me from going to work. So I'm probably not as sensitive as other people are about things like that. So anyway, thankfully it's not an issue. Existing leave policies, you don't have to change them if they already allow you to take off. That question, we get half our questions are paid time off questions. I thought this law was going to give me 5 more days of leave. What the hell? No. And I'll share this PowerPoint so you don't have to, I don't see anybody furiously taking notes, but if you do, I'll share it. You can have, so state government employees, how much they paid, you get paid your regular rate. How is it accrued and carried over? Unused leave rolls over at the end of the year. If you front load the leave, you don't have to allow your employees to roll over unused leave. You can have a use it or lose it policy. You don't have to pay out leave on termination if you don't want to, but if you do let somebody go and didn't pay out their leave, if you rehire them within 37 weeks, you got to reinstate the unused leave balance. So that's like an Ocean City thing. Where's 37 weeks come from? 37 weeks is evidently the approximate time between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So I think that's where they got that. So that was, a lot of these weird numbers in the law have something to do with Ocean City and summer workers. The 106 days is another one. You can set up a policy that says you can't use your earned leave in your first 106 days. 106 days is basically the length of summer in Ocean City. So when they put the bill in originally, it was 90 days, and then everybody down Ocean City was like, wait a minute, if I have a 90-day, then everybody's going to take off on the 91st day. And so they made it 106 days. So that's where the weird number comes from. Front loading. Rehiring, if you rehire them within 37 weeks, you got to restate the balance. You have to provide notice when you're going to take off unless it's not practicable. The only reason I think they use the term practicable in there, because there's not really a definition of practicable. I think someone said, we think it would be funny if we can make the Commissioner of Labor say practicable as many times as possible. And I have trouble saying practicable. I also have trouble saying rural, and thankfully rural is not in this bill, but practicable is. So you have to provide notice as soon as is practicable. And the employer can ask you to provide verification of that it was a valid usage if you take off for more than 2 consecutive shifts. That is a loophole that you could drive a truck through. If you're even remotely creative as an employee, you can come up with a different reason every day that you need to take off. Make up some story of my dog got sick, well, not dog, my kid got sick, my spouse was sick, so I'm off for 2 days, and that's 2 different reasons, so yeah, you're out of luck. So that one, that's almost impossible for the employer to ever use, but if you do, that's the rule. The reasons leave can be denied. If they don't have leave in the first place, deny it. If they didn't provide notice and it's an absence will cause a disruption, and disruption is not inconvenience, it's a higher bar. It's like disruption, not inconvenience. And then there's some exemptions if you're providing services to developmentally disabled or mentally ill individuals. They don't want you to call out and leave somebody without somebody taking care of them. Shift trading, people can trade shifts. Leave increment, smallest increment the law or the payroll system allows up to 4 hours. You can't say your employee has to take a full day if they want to go to the doctor's for 20 minutes. You can say 4 hours, but you can't say full day. You have to tell them how much balance you have. When the minimum wage law and this law passed, it required a lot of changes to pay stubs. I had no idea it would be so difficult to change pay stubs, but the minimum wage law required us to work with payroll companies to come up with some way that it should be printed on the pay stub. That took us like 18 months to figure out a way to do it because it is not easy to change pay stubs. There's a bill so far that got tabled, but one that would have like 8 new things that your pay stub would have to have, especially if your people get paid piece rate. Sorry, carpet guy. It would be very difficult to ever pay piece rate under that bill because of the pay stub. You'd have a pay stub 5 pages long. And you have to keep records for 3 years. And then I've got a lot of frequently asked questions. Some of them are funny. My favorite is, we're not going to go through all these. Montgomery has its own special sick leave law. If you do work in Montgomery County, they have their own. That one, yeah, this is a good one. Our company would like to establish a policy of, and real question, by the way, not one that I made up for fun. We would like to establish a policy of 40 hours, 5 paid days up front, sick and safe leave, and would like to upfront Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas. Would that be acceptable? Actual question we got, no, not allowed, because sick leave is supposed to be used when you're sick, not on holidays. That's called holiday pay. Ironically, holiday pay is not required by Maryland law. So if you want to be Ebenezer Scrooge and take away all your paid holidays and make a paid sick leave out of that bucket of 5 days, go nuts. That's fine with us. We don't care. You just have to allow them to take it when they need it, not on Christmas. I don't know what the guy did that had that policy, but his employees never filed a complaint, so I don't know. But most employees don't file complaints. They just quit and then say bad things about you to their family, friends, and neighbors and talk crap about you online. So treat your employees nice. Otherwise, they'll quit and say bad things about you to everybody they know. This is the, we thought we were going to get 5 extra days of leave, and we didn't. Question, just another version of it. No, it's not extra days. It's minimum paid time off, not sick leave plus everything you already had. Can an organization opt out by prepaying an employee for the equivalent amount of 5 days of sick leave and not actually allow them to accrue the use of sick leave? Decent question. So if I want to say, you know what, I'm going to give you the 5 days in money at the beginning of the year if you promise you won't take off throughout the year, can I do that? No. It's a good idea, though. Good try. But no, you have to be able to use the leave when you need it. So it's job protection for when I have to take off, because there may be times I have to take off. That's why it's there. Yeah, it was a good one. And we get Honestly, there's at least once a week somebody asks a question where I have to stop and think, oh, wait a minute, that's a pretty good one. Like, what happens if I was accruing leave and I want to switch to a front-loading plan? What do I do with can I delete the balance of people at the beginning of the year since I'm now going to be front-loading? Or the opposite, I was front-loading it and now I want to switch to accrual and we weren't letting them carry it over. Do I have to let them carry it over now that we switched it? Scratch your head, get the law out, read it, and come up with an answer. But yeah, some of them are tricky questions. And I'm at 50 minutes, so I know I've been flying through stuff. Any questions about anything that we talked about, anything the Department of Labor covers? I'll give you my my closing thought on Department of Labor stuff. We're friendly. The people that work there are friendly. We're not out to get you, thank God. I thought they would be when I first came to government. My impression in the private sector is there's an army of government employees whose dream is to know who you are and come to your business and ruin your life. Not actually there. They have an army of employees that are trying to enforce the laws, but if you do it right, we don't know you exist. So if you have questions, call us, ask us. That doesn't put you on a list for us to come visit your place and check your posters. Ask a question. So we're easily accessible. I carry around my phone all the time. If you have a question, call me. My number's on the website. That phone number on the website rings to my cell phone 24 hours a day. I probably won't answer at 2 in the morning, but maybe I will. During unemployment nightmare time, I would get calls all hours of the day and night. Thankfully, I'm not charged unemployment, but I'm in the same building, so my phone number, people would just, they were so desperate for somebody to answer their damn questions that they would just, sometimes people would just start dialing 767-0000, 767-0001 until they got to somebody that would answer the phone. Can't blame them. I would have probably done the same thing because it's kind of frustrating when you need help and nobody answers the phone. So I would answer the phone all hours of the day and night and do my best to try to help people figure stuff out. But if you ever do have an unemployment question, I can probably answer about half of them. But thankfully that wasn't my, yes sir. I have no idea. My guess is because somebody wrote the bill that way. There's all sorts of bizarre stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like originally building codes were part of the Department of Housing and Community Development. Makes sense because the word housing's in there, and housing and community sounds like it should have building codes. They don't do anything with building. They're like a financing thing. They do grants and financing, so it got transferred. Somehow I am going to be in charge of, or the commissioner, not me, whoever ends up being the commissioner after I'm dead and gone, plastic bags. That's going to be the Department of Labor enforcing the plastic bag ban whenever that happens. Because it would go in the business regulation article, and the business regulation article is designated as Secretary of Labor has to enforce it, and there's nowhere else to stick it in the Department of Labor, so they would give it to us. We enforce horse racing. Horse racing is Department of Labor. Mixed martial arts is Department of Labor. I don't know. Not true. So somebody wrote it and they gave it to that part of government, and then if the government figures out it doesn't belong that way, they have to put in a bill to move it. So like with the building codes, Department of Housing and Community Development had no idea what they did, didn't like having to deal with it, thought they were really kind of annoying, had them in the basement all the way in the back corner, literally in the basement in the back corner, and then finally somebody said, can we give these guys to somebody else? So they put in a bill that moved them from housing to Department of Labor, and all 3 employees of the building codes unit now are at my office. They moved from Lanham to Hunt Valley.
Do they have a window now?
Actually, the guy has the nicest set of windows in what used to be the lobby. We carpeted it and made an office out of the old lobby. So yeah, Norman has the front lobby. Yes, ma'am. It's having been in the private sector and having to be subject to all these rules. It's I have a very different perspective than people that have worked for government their whole life. We realize it's not easy to know what's going on. You don't have a lawyer that sits there and keeps up with all the changes and tells you all the new things and runs over and says, oh, wait a minute, the law changed. here's something different. So, like with the sick leave law, if you're in violation of the sick leave law, we help you figure out how to fix it. We're not here to penalize you. We can issue fines for things. We don't keep any of it. So, occupational safety, you do something wrong and we issue you a citation that comes with a financial penalty, we don't keep it. It goes to the general fund. We don't keep any of the penalties. So we have no incentive to fine people. We're like the police without any kind of fining ability. We don't get to keep it. We're not in it for the money. We want people to be safe and paid correctly and everybody be happy. So our goal is to have it be done right, not to find people in violation of the law, but help people figure out how to comply with it. So we realize it's difficult. This isn't a trap. It's supposed to be, we're here to help and make it right, not issue citations. Citations, unfortunately, are what some people need, though, to do it right. Yes, ma'am? It depends on the complaint. So, like, if we get a safety complaint, safety complaint comes in, they either call or fill it out online. We review it, make sure there's an employer-employee relationship. So our law only lets us cover employer-employee. And then if it does, we assign it to an investigator. The investigator make contact with the company, or depending on what it is, if it's something that's a grave danger, they'll get in the truck and run out there and investigate. And if it's not a grave danger, they'll make contact with the employer and investigate it. If it's a wage and hour complaint, like if somebody, the bread and butter of the wage and hour complaints is, I got fired, I didn't get my last check. What do I do? Or I got paid in a bounce. What do I do? They file a wage complaint. We assign it to an investigator. They make contact with the company. Thankfully, for those laws, the Employment Standards Unit is set up to help individuals without having to go to an attorney. So if you got $400 of wages that are owed to you and you didn't get it, by the time you go to attorney and go to court, 6 months from now, it costs you $4,000 to get your $400, and you get it 6 months from now if you're lucky. Our law allows us to have an investigator investigate it, and if they find that wages are due, we can issue a final order under the commissioner's authority for up to $5,000, and that's as good as a judge's order. It costs nothing. We don't collect any percentage of it. So for free, you file a complaint, we investigate it, and it's resolved hopefully within a couple weeks. And we get 1,000, 1,200 of those a year. And it's counter-cyclical with the economy. So economy is good, pretty much everybody's getting paid. Economy sucks, checks start bouncing, companies start closing, we get more complaints. So like right now, things are kind of quiet because everybody that is going to go bankrupt kind of went bankrupt. So we're kind of in this little lull in the cycle. So for now, it's quiet. But yeah, hopefully it's as quick as possible. Like if you file a complaint with EEOC, for example, they've got such a huge backlog, it might be years by the time something gets done. Maryland has a EEOC version called the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, or MCCR. Couple month turnaround time for them, if you're lucky. Our stuff that we do, it should be a couple weeks. We're pretty fast. But a lot of that's because we have a good staff that are relatively experienced, and wage and hour law is not that complicated as some of the other stuff is, so it's pretty clear cut. You're either owed the wages or you're not, so those things can get run through pretty fast. Discrimination claims, that's different. Those are complicated. There's a lot of everybody's right kind of things. So anyway, I don't have another slide. My email address is my name, matt.helminiak@maryland.gov. No one can spell Helminiak, don't worry about it. If you want to, my phone number, 410-241-4777. Call anytime. If you have any questions, I can give you my card and reach out afterwards. We're easy to get along with and accessible. Thank you for your time, and hopefully I didn't confuse y'all.